Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm Francesca Maxime. We continue to discuss the Newtown massacre yesterday, where 20 elementary school students were killed, several adults as well. President Obama made an address to the nation yesterday afternoon when this happened, and he called for the nation to come together with tears in his eyes, hoping that there will be some kind of learning as we continue to mourn this tragedy. Let's take a look.
As a country, we have been through this too many times. Whether it's an elementary school in Newton, or a shopping mall in Oregon, or a temple in Wisconsin, or a movie theater in Aurora, or a street corner in Chicago, these neighborhoods are our neighborhoods, and these children are our children. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics. This evening, Michelle and I will do what I know every parent in America will do, which is hug our children a little tighter, and we'll tell them that we love them, and we'll remind each other how deeply we love one another. But there are families in Connecticut who cannot do that tonight, and they need all of us right now. In the hard days to come, that community needs us to be at our best as Americans, and I will do everything in my power as president to help.
Now, you know, a lot of people have said that the president may need to do more, and I suspect that he will come out with more of a forceful statement in the coming days, and he will, have some kind of a plan put forth, perhaps for greater gun control, as Mayor Bloomberg has, desired and called for, and as many of in the nation have called for. What are your thoughts on what could be done? I know that some of the things could be reinstating the assault weapons ban that expired in 2004, banning high-capacity magazines, requiring criminal background checks on gun buyers at gun shows, and improving instant background checks to more thoroughly catch people with histories of mental illness. When is this going to take place? How are we going to hook into this? What needs to be done?
Well, all of those things need to be done. All of those things need to be done. That's not, by the way, going to end these kinds of shooting sprees, though. But it will limit the capacity for some of these folk who have mental challenges to do some of these things. If you put the assault weapons ban in place, I would also say we've got to put some limits on the amassing of ammunitions as well. If we do some of these things, it will hedge against it, but it still doesn't get to the root cause of the problem, which is we live in a culture of violence. We have a nation that's been engaged in war for over a decade. We have a nation that engages in drone warfare. I mean, we model violence as a nation, and we have to think about how that culture of violence trickles down through video games.
So how do we begin to change our culture to one more of compassion, to one more of understanding? How do we begin to do that?
I got a silly solution actually about video games. The idea of I'm going to suggest this to Nina in the 11th grade when she's putting together the revamping of video games to make it more educational. What if actually video game players got more points for saving people's lives than for ending them in a video game? Something as silly as that. But I'm saying ways of kind of beginning to maybe retrain and maybe beginning at least on that level and that medium to kind of re-inject the importance of the saving of human life. I know it sounds silly.
But going back to what James was saying, a lot of times video games are also mimicking our military approaches, our political approaches. So we actually mimic the bigger picture.
The most popular ones are doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
The most popular video games that are violent video games
so
are mimicking our militarized culture.
And we look at our defense budget here in the United States, and we look at the wars that we elect to engage in and the ones that we have waged, and we look at the industries that we've continued to sink money into, including the prison industry and
so it's kind of like a chicken egg kind of.
Well, I just think that it's a financial issue too, because we have a gun industry and we have an arms industry, an international arms industry, and we have but
those industries are wealthy enough, number one, to divert some of their dollars towards trying to address these efforts, and number two, even though they want to continue to proliferate weaponry and guns, they can survive. They're going to be fine if we start to manage that a little bit more.
They're corporations, and they have a duty to their stockholders to produce
and they also
profits.
have a duty to the nation in which they're making all this money.
It's all of the above. We need to find ways individually to make a difference, to whether it's interpersonally or in lobbying, whatever it is that each of us does. And I hope that each of us has a chance to make that kind of a declaration. But it's like all of the above. We have to do all of these things and see what sticks, and then find more ways of doing that. But there's no magic bullet. Sorry for the analogy in solving this.
How successful are things like restorative justice programs, and what kind of community building can we do? You know, if you were to come up with a plan, I mean, you know, what kind of programs would actually work?
I mean, I think it starts with a national conversation around the three main threads that we're talking about: the mental health piece, the culture of violence piece, and the gun control piece. So we have a national. What that means is that our leaders will engage in conversations and in innovative ways of thinking about how you address those things. What should come out of that from at a community or more local perspective is, listen, what can we do to erase the stigma around mental health? What can we do to pour some of our resources back into mental health programs to make sure that there's more psychologists in schools, that we're able to identify problems a lot bit earlier? What can we do to make sure that parents who are in homes sometimes where children are obviously having problems and obviously alienated from our society, who do they call when that happens? Who can they talk to that's not going to bring the stigma of mental health into those situations?
Yes,
so,
and let's be honest about it.
It has to be global
James,
and work its way down locally.
It has to do with votes, who gets voted into office. If this is actually going to put pressure on the electorate, to put pressure on those hoping for public office. In other words, if they become sensitized to these issues and start taking stands to promote the kind of safety and security that we all want, then they will be the ones receiving more votes and getting voted into office, as opposed to being influenced and co-opted by the lobbyists.
Sure. Why do you think Mayor Bloomberg has been one of the most out front advocates of more gun control and of having this national conversation? One is because he understands that gun control in his city has helped to reduce crime. He's seen the positive effects of it. But two, he's also connected to he understands industry very well.
Yeah.
So he understands exactly what you're talking about, WJ, which is the proliferation is something that won't stop in a capitalist society unless we begin to have sort of a national sort of ideological change about what weapons mean in our society. And so the things that we have to do are broad. We're talking about big revolutionary changes.
Holistic, big picture.
Holistic, big picture things. But it's pretty clear that these are the three areas we have to talk about. Mental health, culture of violence, and gun control.
And gun control. And you know, just as we wrap up here on Fresh Outlook today, we have one final look at what is happening in Newtown, Connecticut now, and the healing that must take place.
Well, it's what you see when people get horrible news. You know, there are people who are crying and they're grieving terribly, but these are children. So it's just wails of grief, of this inexplicable loss. And then trying to find other family members and pull together so that they could comfort each other. And then I was there to, I was looking for the people who didn't have a family member, someone who might just be standing by themselves, and tried to give them comfort, or just be with them until their family could show up. And
well, you know, those words obviously from somebody there on the scene, in the town, in the area, trying to just make sense of it, just like all of us here in the nation are. And I think that in the coming days, we're all going to try to come up with our own solutions, and you'll see people in their own communities trying to perhaps join the national debate. There was a petition that they said was circulated online through social media that garnered the required 25,000 signatures to get the president's attention on the issue in a matter of a couple of hours. And so perhaps some grassroots efforts like that will continue to kind of push this conversation forward, and as my friend said, make it less about a conversation and more about a national argument. Anybody have any closing thoughts?
I mean, I'm just going to tag along to what James said. It requires long-term, solution-based approaches, holistic, and politicians need to be need to feel that they're going to be held accountable. But grassroots,
some of the sustainability responsibility for the conversation falls on us, falls on the media. The media has to be responsible to keep the conversation
all right,
going.
thank you, and that is all the time that we have for today in the media here on Fresh Outlook. I'm Francesca Maxime. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for Every TV for more news on this Newtown, Connecticut massacre.